Hello, and welcome to Simple Man Sermons, the preachings of a simple man called by God to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Today we're going to be talking about the parable of the prodigal son, but maybe in a way that you haven't heard the message before. You see, in the tale of the prodigal son, there are two sons, and likely when you hear this, you liken yourself or you're taught about the younger son who squanders the living and goes away. But God doesn't do anything that's superfluous. There are two sons mentioned in this story, and if He only wanted to tell the tale of the younger son, there was no reason, I don't see in the narrative, to put the older son in. There are two sons mentioned in this parable. Before explaining further, I think it's best to read the text. We will go to Luke, the Gospel of Luke, that is, and we will read starting in chapter 15. Then he said, "A certain man had two sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me.' So he divided to them his livelihood. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with prodigal living. But when he had spent all, there arose a famine in the land, and he began to be in want. Then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed swine. And he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the swine ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will rise and go to my father, and will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father. But when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Bring out the best robe, put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And bring the fatted calf here and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead, and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to be merry. Now the older son was in the field, and as he drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, 'Your brother has come, and because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf.' But he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. So he answered and said to his father, 'Lo, these many years I have been serving you. I have never transgressed your commandment at any time, and yet you never gave me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this son of yours came, who devoured your livelihood with harlots, you killed the fatted calf for him.' And he said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found.'" Now there have certainly been times in my life where I have been the prodigal son, where I have gone astray and God has sought me and received me back, though I didn't deserve it. That has certainly been the case. But if I'm being honest, there's also times when I'm the older son. And maybe you as well have had times where you're the older son, where you were so focused on what somebody else was doing or what somebody else has, or what you didn't perceive that you already had, that you were so distracted that you did not go into the Father's love, that you did not receive the Father's love because you were focused on something else. Notice what the Father says, "Son, you were always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found." How many of us get upset and distracted about what somebody else is doing or what somebody else has, that we even forget all that we've already been given? He says, all that I have is yours. He's saying if you wanted to, kill a goat and eat it with your friends, you could have done that. It was yours. But he was upset about what his brother had done, what his brother was doing, that his father forgave his brother, that his brother was getting this attention. He forgot that his brother loved him, his father loved him too. His father loved him as well. And in this, the son that went away is the younger son. Now, you may not be super acquainted with this, but certainly the people reading this at the time would have known the commandment in the Old Testament. The younger brother gets less than the older brother. The older brother gets a double portion. The firstborn son gets a double portion. So the older brother had twice as much as his younger brother was ever going to have. He had more. It was his. It was his inheritance. He didn't have to earn it. He didn't have to work for it. It was his. The younger brother got what was his, and the older brother likewise got twice as much. But he was so worried about what his younger brother was doing and what his younger brother had squandered, instead of focusing on what the father had given him and the blessings the father had given him. And I fear sometimes we can all be that older brother. Do we not see the same thing in the garden with Eve? It says there were many trees in the garden that were good for food. Many blessings. It was a paradise. Even the tree of life was there. Eve could have eaten freely of it at any time. But she focused on the one tree that she wasn't supposed to have, on the one thing she wasn't supposed to have, instead of all the blessings. And that thing wasn't even good for her. God told her that it was bad and she shouldn't touch it. But again, if we read that story, it says she looked upon it. She was focused on what she didn't have, instead of all the blessings she had already been given. For it says in Deuteronomy, and to keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes, which I command you today, for your good. They're given for our good. God's not withholding stuff. He's not telling us to stay away from stuff because he's stingy or selfish. That's not God. He's telling us to stay away from bad stuff, stuff that's bad for us. Those restrictions were given for our good. If God says something is good, it's good. If he says something is bad, it's bad. It's simple. This is simple man sermons. Even though you may not understand it at the time. Look at a child. Likely if you let a child, they would eat nothing but chocolate cake and candy if you gave them the option. And they may seem good to them at the time. You know, as a wise parent, that that's not good for the child. You tell them to stay away from it for their own good. I saw a little baby yesterday at their first birthday party, and there was obviously something burning on the cake. And the baby tried to reach out and grab the fire because it's pretty, because it's beautiful, because it's tempting. And of course, the good mother did not let the baby touch the fire. Why? For the baby's own good. Because that baby didn't know that fire burns yet. It was a 1-year-old baby. It had no concept of being burned or pain from fire. But the mother sure knew. And it wanted the baby to stay away from that for its own good. So I'd say have some circumspection. What are you focused on? Do you see God as a stingy father who won't give you what's yours? Or are you focused on all the blessings you've already been given, the double portion? If you're a Christian, he chose you to be a special people above all people on the face of the earth. Deuteronomy 7, for you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you out of all the peoples of the face of the earth to be his people, his treasured possession. Likewise in 1 Peter, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession. And if you're listening to this and you're not yet a Christian, don't be like the older son. There's a thing that God has for you. Salvation. Saving from those things that are not good for you. Salvation that you can claim as an inheritance because of Jesus Christ, because he died for you. How great a gift is that? What a shame it would be to leave that thing unclaimed, to be so focused on other things, on other petty things, that you neglect a beautiful gift that God has waiting for you freely. Revelation 22, come. Let the one who hears say, come. Let the one who is thirsty come, and let the one who wishes to take the free gift of the water of life. For it is written, he said, he came that we may have life and have it more abundant. But no matter how much you have, if you're focused on what you don't have or what somebody else is doing, You could be surrounded by beautiful trees and focused on the one that you're not supposed to touch. You could have a double portion, but be focused on what somebody else has or what somebody else is doing with what they've been given. But as Jesus says to Judas, or rather, as Jesus says to Peter about Judas, see, Peter is wondering what about Judas. And Jesus says, "What is that to you? You follow me." So don't worry about what somebody else is doing. You follow Christ. You follow what you're supposed to be doing. Focused on what you've been given and do the best with what you have. Again, in the tale of the sons we just read, it says, "Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours." Are there blessings right in front of you that you are not taking, that you are not drinking of, that you are not receiving, because you're so focused on what somebody else is doing, what somebody else has done, or so focused on something else, something that's not good for you, that you're neglecting all the good things that you've been given freely, because you certainly don't deserve any good thing. All is a gift from God. You are because He made you. You have because He's given you. And you love because He first loved you. God is the source of all good things. You don't deserve any of it. You haven't earned it. You don't deserve it. But you've been given it freely, so receive it and enjoy it. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in ancient Hebrew, as in, the Old Testament and the Bible, as I understand it, there was no future tense. There was no you will, or it will be. Abraham had a single son. It is written, "I have made you a father of many nations." Or, "Your name has been Abraham," or "Your name has been Sarah." They didn't even know it yet, but that had always been their name. They had always had that promise. They had always been the heir. They had always had those things. They just didn't know it yet. I'm reminded of one of my favorite verses. "Whatever things you ask for when you pray, believe that you receive them and you will have them." Mark 11:24. Whatever things you ask when you pray, believe that you receive them and you will have them. You believe first before it physically manifests itself. As the Bible says, who hopes for what they already have? But if you hope for what you don't have yet. And you believe that you already have it. That's faith. That's walking by faith and not by sight. But sometimes we even have it. We even possess it. Like we can even physically enjoy it and we still don't receive it because we're so distracted by other things. So, let us learn a lesson about this from the parable of the two sons. And it is always good to go back and read that parable and enjoy the blessings of the younger son and enjoy being freely forgiven when we've done wrong. But it's also good to look back and remember about the older son and not get distracted by what other people are doing or what other people have and missing out on what we've already been given. Thanks, and have a blessed day.